Welcome to the October 26th regular meeting of the Calaveras County Planning Commission. We will get started with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Are there any staff announcements or agenda changes?
Good morning, Madam Chair. None, thank you.
Thank you. Then we will open the general public comment period. It's an opportunity for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on any matter within the jurisdiction of the commission, but not posted on the regular or consent agendas today. Is there anybody who would like to provide general comments? Sure, come on up.
Hello. I'm Mike Roby. I'm the president of the Calaveras County Cattlemen's Association. And
So it sounds like you want to speak to the greenhouse gas item.
yes.
Okay, so hang on just one moment and you'll have an opportunity.
Oh, okay.
This is things not on our agenda today.
It's not on the agenda.
We are going to speak to the greenhouse gas today.
Oh, okay. I didn't-
So maybe you just lucked out and picked the right day.
Good morning. My name is Mitchell Bensagua. I'm a field representative for the NorCal Carpenters Union. I'm based out of local 152 in Manteca, but my area covers San Joaquin, Stanislaus, Merced, as well as Amador, Calaveras, and Tuolumne counties. I'm here today to speak to you about Assembly Bill 2011. It's a bill that went into effect July 1st of this year. It'll provide streamlined, CEQA-exempt review for certain affordable and mixed housing developments. The bill can generate more affordable homes quickly. It'll provide living wage jobs for local residents. It'll increase your tax base and help localities meet their REMA goals. To assist cities and counties, the Carpenters Union came up with a template application for you guys to adopt. It covers all the requirements of Assembly Bill 2011, which can be quite complex, and puts them into a straightforward checklist. That checklist has been reviewed and approved by our legal department, so we've been given go ahead to start handing it out. I'm more than willing to meet up with anybody who would like more information about Assembly Bill 2011 or anybody who would like to receive that template. Also, Senate Bill 4 was just recently signed by the governor. It has very similar language, but it's for institutions of higher education and religious institutions. So it would allow schools or churches, religious institutions to build affordable housing or mixed income housing on their land, and it has very similar language. So I'll leave my contact card, and if anybody would like more information, then get a hold of me.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So do we want to get a copy of the template?
Check of the checklist. Yes, I think we'd love to get a copy of the checklist.
Let's see if I have.
Susan's now doing multi-purpose work.
I'm pretty antsy after sitting in that chair for 3
Thank
days.
you. Is there anyone else with general public comments before we close this piece of the agenda? And I assume nobody online.
There's no online public comment.
Thank you. Then, seeing no consent agenda items, we'll move on to the regular agenda, which is going to be continued off calendar. We need a motion on that.
For one item, not the greenhouse gas. For one item, not the greenhouse gas.
This proposed ordinance to repeal the cannabis background clearance badge.
Yes. You made the motion?
I made
Yes.
a motion.
I'll second it.
There you go. We're switching places today.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Passes. I guess we're 401 missing commissioner. And then we will open the item B, which is informational and is further discussion of the greenhouse gas reduction plan measures to finalize the commission's memorandum to the Board of Supervisors. And I assume that's what most of you are here for today. So before we open this up for members of the public or representing county agencies and commissions, is there any member of the commission who wants to bring up anything?
Yeah, I'd like to mention the amendments that have been made since the last time this was before us. As far as the greenhouse gas reduction plan itself, there have been several amendments made because of suggestions made by the agricultural commissioner. And in the copies before you, those are in red of the plan itself that has the July 17th date on it, but the July 17th has little to do with this at this point, because most of the body of this are provisions that we have amended since then to fit Calaveras County. But I have several amendments, well, maybe just one, to the plan itself on page 18. In order to clarify our off-road equipment and vehicles provision, in paragraph 1, well, I'll read the whole paragraph down to where I'm going to propose the amendment. Create a phased ordinance by the end of 2024 to reduce in stages to zero the local operation of gasoline and diesel-powered off-road equipment by type. Also provide in the ordinance that when sufficient funding is obtained to fund effective incentives, such as payments for equipment turned into the county upon proof of purchase of non-fossil fueled replacement equipment, local operation of small off-road engines, SOAR, that are, and this is where the amendment would be, insert the words, of the types subject to regulation. So that are of the type subject to regulation by the California Air Resources Board shall be phased out by 2030.
Mr. Commissioner, what page are you reading from?
18.
Page 18?
Okay, did you skip 14?
No,
No, he's
this is an additional,
proposing an additional amendment to further clarify that we're not proposing all off-roads, only the ones that they are regulating.
Okay, very good.
so the insertion of the words of the types there. Then, yes, there are the other amendments on page 14, 22, 23, 27, and 28 that arose from discussions with the agricultural commissioner, and those are in red on the copies that you have. Then as far as the statement of the Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors, the other document we're working on today, on page 1, in the first paragraph, the last line, where it says levels by 2030, it should be levels as of 2030 to conform with the language that's in the general plan. Then on page 4, in the discussion of the off-road equipment and vehicles, again, we're inserting the phrase of the types, and that will be in the line that starts on the second paragraph on page 4, starts with a parenthetical phrase correctly defined as off-road or small off-road engines. then continuing that are of the types regulated by the Air Resources Board. And then
Types as in plural?
types, yes. Then at the bottom of that same page in footnote 4, halfway down through the footnote, there's a line that starts with the word which, W-H-I-C-H. Again, the word types should be inserted after the word which. And that's what I have.
Is there anything else before we hear from our guests today? Okay. You're good? Did you have a checklist with you that you wanted to provide to us?
I don't have them printed. If somebody wants to give me an email address.
He'll get you that information. Go ahead. So, who would like to come on up and speak first?
All right, so, yes. Once again, I represent the cattlemen of the county, much such as it is. We are really concerned about that section on the off-road vehicles. To my mind, the percentage of fuel used by off-road vehicles is minuscule compared to what's on the highways. You're picking on a section of transportation that's really vital to this county. I assume you all live here. You probably got off-road vehicles yourself. They're not contributing to pollution. They're not using a lot of fuel. I have a side-by-side Kubota that's diesel. I probably used 3 months worth of fuel just driving to this meeting in my truck. So it's, we just would like to see you strike this section of it. The other issue, which is really the biggest issue, is how it's going to be enforced. How are you going to enforce this? Are you going to send people onto people's private property to cite them for running a ATV? I would not want to be that person. So I think the state's got to regulate this. I don't think it's proper for Calaveras County to regulate this. I think you should follow the state's lead and let them try to enforce it. That's it.
Yes. Do you want to respond? I mean, our understanding is we have no choice but to include it in the greenhouse gas plan. We have all those same concerns.
As you probably understand, the general plan has set this goal for us to be 40% in emissions of greenhouse gases in Calaveras County. We need to reach, as of 2030, a goal of 40% less than what we had in 1990. Our consultants have come up with a plan that would meet that, but it meets it only with a cushion, a very small cushion of satisfaction of it. We, the Planning Commission, have amended the greenhouse gas plan, reduction plan, in many ways to make it, we think, more realistic than what the consultants presented us with. And the main component of the reduction is on-road vehicles. I mean, that is the major chunk of where we're going to save on the emissions. But we're told by the consultants that unless we do something about the off-road vehicles, we're not going to make the goals set by the general plan. And we need to provide the Board of Supervisors with a plan that would meet that goal. Now, if they decide they want to amend the general plan so that the county doesn't need to meet that goal, that's something else. But we have, as I say, worked on what the consultants provided us, and we've made it much more user-friendly.
So ultimately, the supervisors can say yea or nay, or they can strike sections of this?
Well, yeah, but we'll be presenting this to the supervisors soon.
Sounds like I'm maybe wasting my time, so.
Well, we appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, and you're going back to the consultants, these are the same consultants that suggested we eliminate dairies in the county and a whole bunch of other boilerplate.
No,
Yeah.
we have modified
I know you
extensively.
did, but
what
it's the
was
same
there,
consultants who
including
are
this section-
suggesting this.
Including this section, we have modified
No,
extensively.
I've seen those,
From
yes.
what was provided, and the only things that are included in there now are what the state is saying they are going to require anyway, and which on their timeline. The consultants asked us to expedite that timeline and to start requiring this to happen earlier. We removed everything except what the state is saying they are going to require. Who knows what, if the state will realize at some point that it's not realistic for rural areas, that some of these things are just
I
not
wouldn't
really
hold my breath.
attainable for us, which they have done in other pieces. You know, there are portions of other greenhouse gas measures that they have instituted but have given longer timelines to rural counties. So provided exemptions for at least the time being. So I think the state needs to hear from everybody about this. Believe me, we have discussed this ad nauseum because we can't see how the county could ever enforce it in any way. We're not going to be out there checking everybody's chainsaw.
Yeah, so it's up to the supervisors if they want to turn a large portion of Calaveras County citizens into criminals by ignoring this statute, because it will be. So I guess it's up to the soups.
I believe also that the existing equipment that you have is grandfathered in. It's any new.
No, they actually have
didn't-
wording.
Did they have? Okay.
Initially, there is a stage at which they just can't sell it any longer. But then they also have days for, which was our biggest concern, is we were looking for a way to allow people to continue to use indefinitely any equipment they already own.
Yeah,
And
I know
we
CARB
were
was,
able to fly that with our consultants being able to come up with any kind of a quantification of it. And the problem is that we have such a narrow margin of conformance that we can't really afford to lose something. So we've actually been working on looking for a way to buy ourselves a bigger margin, looking for a way to quantify other things. So we are desperately looking for additional measures that might be more realistic and that could give us a little margin to let us take other things out of the plan.
Which is one of the things, excuse me, but one of the ways that we're trying to get more of a cushion for the 40% reduction goal is through sequestration, which cattlemen would come right into that picture as far as the greenhouse gases that your grazing lands
speaking
absorb.
for myself, I would be all for that, the mulching, but the logistics of it is the rub. I mean, first you got to find the material to mulch, and then you've got to apply it to tens of thousands of square miles of rangeland.
Oh.
Well,
No, we're
it's not
looking
just the mulching
for-
though.
Yeah, we're looking for a way to just quantify the fact that we have significant acreage in rangeland and forests that are already doing some piece of that job. And so we would like that to be acknowledged in the plan. And so far, we haven't been successful, but we've continued to look at what other places have done. And Tim has been really instrumental in talking to other agencies in the state, looking for, do you see that potentially we will be able to add this in, and hopefully in a substantive enough way that we could eliminate the most problematic pieces that we would prefer not to include.
I'd also point out that what we've done, as far as what we've changed, as far as what the consultants did, we have conditioned many things upon obtaining grant funding from outside the county. So we're not, if the Board of Supervisors enacts this plan, it's not going to bankrupt the county, because our county can't afford to do things like having a major public transit system that's equivalent to one in Colorado, where the income is, much higher than Calaveras County. So the plan, at this point, if the plan, if fully enacted, would meet the 40% reduction goal, it would satisfy the general plan, as long as the county tries to get the funding. If the county doesn't get the funding, lots of this will not come into
Right, so in
play.
this, we have added language that says that a lot of it is subject to incentive money being available to the ranchers or the people who are affected by this portion of the plan. So all different parts of the plan have different funding required. So we're basically asking the state pony up the money to help us.
Okay, well,
And I can tell you, we really argued over this, because I don't know if you know Kelly or not. He was here.
Yeah.
And myself have cattle, and so
yeah,
we do not like that portion.
I talked to Kelly already. But yeah, so, well, I feel for you folks. You all seem very earnest and understanding and constrained to play a game that's stacked against us, so I guess that's what else to say.
If you have a brilliant creative idea, we really want to hear it.
I was going to avoid saying this, but I cannot, because I reject the whole premise of the thing. So I'm just concerned about what's going to affect me and my fellow cattlemen, and that's the most important thing that's going to constrain us. But anyway, I won't go any further. So thank you.
Well, thank you for
Thanks for
coming.
hearing us, and we'll be talking to the soups.
Yeah.
Come on, Mr. Garrett.
Good morning. My name's Bob Garamendi. I'm a rancher in McCallum Hill, and I do not have the revisions that you have made in front of me, but I appreciate Mr. Roby's comments, but I think it's much broader than any one of these things. You mentioned sequestration. It hasn't been quantified what these working lands provide. My guess is there's a net zero when you put what ranchers are doing and what they're sequestering in their land. I think that's something that needs to be quantified. You mentioned maybe heading in that direction. I think that's very important. Any of these, I looked through the paper, conserve, preserve natural and working lands. How do you do that? Well, we have a general plan, we have zoning, and now we have this that appears to be putting forth conditions, restrictions, requirements on those that are owners or stewards of the working lands. Prepare and adopt county prescriptive grazing practices. Can you explain that and how the county is going about doing that and how that will be enforced? But, you know, it's a rhetorical question.
We
The point is, the more burdens that you place on the landowners that are trying to do the right thing, the harder it'll be to maintain those lands. It's sort of how it's always been. There's a number of factors that you and the supervisors have no control over. But these are things you evidently have some control over. And you said you've modified some of the conditions and some of the requirements.
I might mention, I think there are copies of the completely updated thing, both of those. That's the statement to the Board of Supervisors, and then underneath that, I think you'll find the most recent version. So you might,
Thank you.
yeah, draw upon that. Because I don't know what version you're working from, but if.
Well, it was the one that was on the computer or on the website.
Yeah, so I think that was just recently updated.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we did make a lot of similar changes in that section to say that we would pursue funding to do studies, to determine methods and means that might be appropriate to the way that livestock is raised here in Calaveras County, as opposed to somebody's generic idea of what could be
Is that
done.
something though that the county's going to, I mean, besides what we've already have in place?
That we're gonna look for money to find out if there is a better method than what we're doing. But looking at the very low density of animals per acre here generally, that we're not gonna scrape up manure and put it in a manure digester to contain the
Well,
methane. I mean, it doesn't make any.
But the plan recommends digesters.
No, see, we've changed a lot of that to say that we'll look into these things to see what is appropriate here, and always to pursue funding for these things.
So you're at a disadvantage because you're working
are.
at something that.
Well, I'm at a disadvantage. Yes, I agree with that.
So we have
How can we sit here and make decisions when these things haven't been quantified yet? When we don't know what the confined animal feeding operations are in the county, or what the sequestration is of our.
So we did have an initial quantification based on what they recommended. What we don't have back is, have we completely destroyed it by making all the changes that we made?
That's in here,
we
the
tried.
quantifications of.
Not as far as the sequestration of natural and
Yeah,
working
not the
lands.
sequestration.
So we're
But-
working
But
on,
the rest of it, anything that was in the
Confined feeding
original.
operations, there's a number?
there is a number for
Yeah.
the improving the feed. Like that.
Well, rather than arguing point by point or discussing point by point, to me, it seems like there's a lot of information out there that needs to be known if you're going to be making these kinds of decisions.
So it says increase crop production efficiency and soil health.
Yeah,
And we changed it to say pursue funding to increase crop production efficiency and soil health to reduce emissions 30% by 2030. Improve fertilizer efficiency, blah, blah, blah. And then adopt grazing best management practices set forward by the University of California Cooperative Extension that results in enhanced soil nutrition. So we've just softened everything to try to use something that can be more specific to Calaveras County. And if that information is not available now, to go out and try to develop it. So our obligation now is to find out what it is, to get money, to do a study, to find out what is reasonable.
So how can you explain then how this process will move forward without that information?
So that's what we're trying to find out, is if we change it to soften it this much, how much will that affect the previous quantification?
I have not seen the quantifications.
It's in the,
If you look at,
How much-
on the current one.
Okay.
As an example, look on pages 23 and 24, implement livestock manure management strategies. There is, at the end of that measure, a quantification of 629 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. So a lot of these have been quantified.
But what's that based on?
That,
based
unfortunately.
on their,
I wouldn't say it's arbitrary, but it's what the consultants have, in their expertise, have
You
given.
know, to make it very simple, it seems like how many animals are out there? That's quantifiable. How many are in a confined feeding situation? You
we
know,
agree with you. We say the very first step is to conduct a detailed countywide inventory of livestock and manure management practices to better understand and track GHG emissions from livestock and manure management practices.
I appreciate that very much. My point is,
Yeah.
how can you move forward making decisions?
We're not. We're saying we're going to develop that program based on gaining this information.
And a part, what the consultants are working with, they'll be working with these procedures, strategies that they suggested and then we amended to quantify what they expect will happen from this. And it's what they expect will happen, what the county expects to be the reductions, that will determine whether this plan satisfies the general plan. Now, maybe if the plan comes into effect and with funding all these things happen, maybe we'll get more of a benefit, maybe we'll get less of a benefit. But even if we get less of a benefit than what the consultants came up with, the plan itself will satisfy the general plan. It isn't that come 2032, there'll be an evaluation, well, did this all work? That isn't what the general plan requires. What it requires is a plan that, as far as can be determined, if implemented, would meet the goal that the state is also trying to meet. So
I would just caution, and I'll
Yeah.
leave it at that. I'd just caution that creating regulations, restrictions that would go against another part of this plan, which is conserve and preserve working lands, is something that needs to be really thought through. When you go from one part of this plan right through, you go, okay, this sounds good, but over here, it's sort of counter to that. And I just think that those things need to be taken under consideration.
Yeah, so I can't agree with you more. Part of our biggest concern is that the baselines that we're starting from, we can't even really verify that they're accurate. So we're working with data that they've put together from various sources that can't be truth checked, because we know pieces of it don't match what is happening right now in the county. But that's the number we're starting with. So, and now we have quantification that we have no understanding of how they're calculating these things. And we're very concerned that we not do exactly what you're talking about, have unintended consequences by forcing something here that influences something over here, that influences something over here, and then makes something completely unsustainable in the long run. So I can't tell you how much we agree with what you're saying. We just know that our obligation is to provide a plan that calculates that if it was able to be fully implemented, that it meets this goal that is set in the general plan. Right now, it's not telling us that we have to meet the goal. What we have to do is start planning to meet the goal. And if some of those things clearly are not going to work out, then I would suspect that the state is going to see that statewide and that they are going to adjust their own goals. And
I think you'll find, I'm sorry.
go ahead. I could blather on about what I hope will
appreciate
happen. but
your
It's
position.
blathering.
But I think if you read it through, most of it is develop with farmers a program. And after getting the funding to do that, and work with the farmers to understand under the UC extension plan. And there's very little that says require farmers to change their practices. I don't know, right now I can't.
Today, tomorrow, next week, right?
Right now I can't think of one that is straight out putting the onus on the farmers. It's putting the onus on the county and other agencies to work with farmers to see if things can be improved. So you'd have more involvement with agencies, I agree. But I don't think you're gonna have people coming onto your land and saying,
Stop doing
just how much composted poultry manure have you used in the last week?
Well, whether you're all around, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happens eventually. But the point, again, I'm just going to reiterate one more time.
Sure.
Working lands, as we have spelled out in the general plan in that, make up the vast majority of this county, whether it be forest lands or ranches. They are the answer to the problem. But they aren't the problem. And I think it's important in anything you do and pass forward that that's taken under consideration. And that's why I'm big on this quantification thing. I don't see it. I don't see how many feedlots we have in this county and what they're,
You just struck a nerve there.
and you know, the first, you know, there's a lot of things in here I agree with, I think would be good. One of them is working with UC Extension. They're great. They're sort of already ahead of this thing, and making that more accessible, perhaps, to the landowners is a good idea. But be very cautious about implementing regulations that on the other side would go against what I feel is your solution. Thank you.
I think we all agree, and I think it's been really clear from both the general plan hearings and just what we all experienced talking to people, that it's a priority in this county to keep our open space, to keep our rangelands, to keep our rural character, to keep our agricultural and cattle operations. So I think we're not interested in, we right here, but I think the county as a whole is not interested in doing anything that would hurt that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
And I want to apologize that we had the old version of this up, and we know the level of consternation that it caused us here. So I imagine it had the same effect on everybody else, not realizing that there had already been significant changes made to it.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Jessie Fowler, the Agricultural Commissioner. First of all, I wanted to thank you for looking at my comments and incorporating some of them. I did want to speak, though, as far as quantification. I didn't know if you guys were aware that Marin County has actually done a lot of actually going out and looking at soil types and carbon sequestration. So I just wanted to say that as an avenue if you wanted a little bit more information.
We're aware of that.
Okay,
That's-
perfect.
That
We're
they have done
searching.
a lot more studies, specific studies on their land than most counties have.
Yes.
And it's what our consultants are saying we would have to do in order to quantify the sequestration provisions in our land, in our plan. But I don't mean to take your time explaining, but what we have adopted many provisions from the Butte County plan that did not have that very detailed study. And they quantified. And they quantified after referring to various state programs. So what we're doing is we have a continuing conversation going on with the Air Resources Board as to, okay, now I found this study, can we use that to quantify? And I'm sure, and I really appreciate your involvement and interest in this, I'm sure that we get around to quantification of the sequestration problem. It's easy for me to say. Anyhow, that you're going to be involved in saying, well, how many acres of this type of land do we have? How many acres of that type of land? And we hope that with the detail that your office has access to, if it doesn't have it in your own data, that using some of these other provisions within the Air Resources Board, using them, they can apply them to your data and get a quantification for the sequestration. So yes, thank you for the Marin County. I was aware of it, but it's something we can't draw upon immediately because we haven't done the level of studies that they have done.
Okay, your Air Resources Board did refer us to some other spreadsheets and things that are being worked at, but they're still being developed. So there was no way for us to actually use them to come up with our own numbers. But ultimately, I believe we're going to need to do those background studies like Marin did in order to do something more with this. And perhaps we can amend this plan once we have that and see how much of a benefit we can really get. I mean, that's really our hope. Maybe like Bob, we're saying we're hoping it's going to be our savior also.
Right.
We think it's the solution.
Okay, and then lastly, I was just wondering, is this going to be posted online just so I can forward it to
think
the ag
it
stakeholders?
is. Gabriel, is this most recent version?
I assume that once
One
we
back-
take an
yeah.
action today, that will be online.
Okay, yeah, I was just, because I didn't see this as part of the agenda packet, so I didn't have the most recent.
Yeah, I think it got posted a couple of weeks ago, which was the last.
Okay.
Whenever you sent your comments was when we all realized, oh no, this is responses to something else. So let's make sure that the latest edition of this is available.
So what you had, that you based your second set of comments on.
Yeah.
That was
correct.
That was up to date as of that moment, and really the only changes that have been made to that, other than the types and this sort of amendment that I was suggesting today, are the amendments that are in red in this copy, which were the ones that I reviewed with you.
Correct.
That I understand met what your concerns were at that.
That were an
Okay.
attempt to address your concerns.
Yeah, and you did an excellent job of that. I was just wondering, so is that final version available or going to be available so I
Be
can?
available after the planning.
After this meeting, and
After the entire commission has
deliberated on those comments, then it would be posted online.
Okay, and then will it be posted on your department's website, or is it under the planning, or just the
They'll
be
be on the planning
It will be
department.
a planning
Okay,
department.
it'll be under yours. Perfect.
And
Right.
if you want to post it on your website as well, we'll share that document with you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And
That
and
would
again,
actually
thank
be
you for,
great, if you could help.
But thank you very much for piping up.
Yeah.
no, absolutely.
And expressing your concerns, because as the other members of the audience would appreciate, we really do want to hear from people, and we do, with county agencies, it's very important that we don't impose requirements on people like yourself that would throw your entire operation in jeopardy as far as funding goes and this sort of thing. And I had no idea.
Right. I mean, we're not experts on every piece, definitely.
So thanks.
Yeah, well, and again, thank you for listening and incorporating a lot of my comments. I really appreciate it.
And if any of you guys have a thought, an idea, after this meeting, we still want to hear it. You know, it's not like this is the final opportunity, and I know that you all will be there at the Board of Supervisors, because we are implementing the direction of the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors are the ones who have the authority to modify their goal.
And that, I believe it's November 7th that that's going forward? Yeah, okay.
It is.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Not being an expert on
Come on up.
this stuff, did the consultants quantify the amount of carbon that's absorbed by the vegetation in this county? I'm not talking about rangelands, I mean, that's fine, but I'm talking about the oak trees, the pine trees, the brush. I mean, this county is covered with vegetation.
Exactly.
Did they do that in the
No,
report?
they did not, and that's what we've asked for. They did give us a background study on forest lands at the very beginning,
Yeah,
but then they didn't do anything with it. We've pushed continually, and they have told us that we don't have the right kind of background data, and we need to hire somebody else to provide that, which is what we were speaking to Ms. Fowler about.
Yeah.
Because we did find that another county without those background studies quantified it just based on their mapping of how much open space they had, forested or vegetated areas.
yeah. I mean, you look at old historical photos, there's so much more vegetation than there was just even, there's more
Yeah,
vegetation in this
please.
county than there's ever been, probably historically, even before, when the Indians were here, there's more trees and brush and maybe not grass, but all that stuff. I mean, I think we might be a carbon sink. We should be getting funding from all these other counties for sucking up their carbon that comes up here with the wind.
Yeah,
So-
which, I will mention that this plan, we're not responsible for responding to all that stuff flowing in from the valley. We're only concerned with the CO2 that's emitted in
If that's the
Calaveras County.
case, I think it's pretty obvious that we're sucking up all our carbon dioxide. I mean, look at our air. Our air's almost always great up here, right?
Today's not our best day.
That was it. So,
But I'm not holding anybody responsible for that.
thanks.
Yes. If you guys stumble over anything that looks like it might be helpful to us to provide to our consultants, like you're just, we all probably get a million newsletters and links and things. If you just see something that talks about what some other county in California has done to respond to the greenhouse gas plan, that shows how they quantified sequestration, we'd really like to hear about it. You know, the more background we have, the more examples we can provide to the consultants, the better chance we have.
We have looked at what other counties have done,
Yeah.
and that's where we came up with the Butte County.
Questions.
If you're gonna speak, you have to come back to the microphone.
I do subscribe to a bunch of those things, and I'm just watching to see what kinds of studies crop up that we might be able to use. I don't always know what I'm reading.
Yeah,
To tell you the truth, I get so confused by some of it.
well, that's why when, in my conversations with the Air Resources Board, I'm saying, can you use this to get that? And, but I'm not saying, well, this looks like you could, paragraph 2, section 3 on NCO 256. I don't know what they're talking about, but if it can be used to quantify the sequestration, I want to get some expert opinion saying, yes, you can. And at that point, we can, if our consultants haven't yet responded to our latest version, that as to whether or not we are still within the bounds of the general plan goal. But we have made some changes that we hope will keep us within compliance of that goal. But they might come back and say, no, no, no. And they might come back and say, oh, but you can't quantify your sequestration provisions even though you've amended them. I'm hoping to get ammunition from the Air Resources Board that says, oh, yes, we can.
And of course, come on back up. Yeah, I know.
I would, UC Extension is a tremendous resource. And I've worked with them for years, and they've worked in this county. Scott Onetto, I believe, is still around. The first money, if you get money, and I don't know how UC Extension works it, but I would try to get that information that you need, what you're talking about, and what Mr. Roby just mentioned. What is the sequestration capability of Calaveras County and the working lands in that, and come up with that number. And then their numbers about emissions in that, I guess, have some basis of reality. But we, like you're saying, we don't know what we're taking in. And we probably are taking in a lot from other counties as well. So I would recommend working with UC Extension, because they're the ones that are leading a lot of this programs in other counties.
Yeah, and I am subscribing to their newsletters, so.
Well, I would
Contact
certainly
them
recommend
directly.
contacting them and seeing what they can do to help.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good. Okay. Anybody online at all, Annette, who might want to speak?
Annette?
We do have Mr. Infacino online.
Tom, would
Good
you like
morning.
to speak?
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Tom Infacino, Calaveras Planning Coalition. I just want to thank so much the representatives from the ranching community who are here today to speak about carbon sequestration. Their efforts at carbon sequestration are going to be the difference in this state, in this country, and in this world. The opportunities for carbon sequestration on the range are enormous, and I thank them for coming forward today and helping us take the next step forward toward making carbon sequestration a real serious part of what we do in the future in Calaveras County. So I just want to say thank you.
Thanks. Okay, we will close the public comment portion of this really informational item, so it's kind of little more loosey-goosey than usual anyway. So if you think of something else to add, let us know. But is there anything more that any of you would like to say? Certainly
Well-
don't let me speak for you if there's something else you want to add.
Good. I think what we have for presentation to the Board of Supervisors is under our current knowledge, and after working on this for months, for actually years, I don't know when we started, that it's ready for presentation to the board, for the board to consider its, the obligations under the general plan, and to consider all the concerns that have been voiced here today, as well as the concerns that we express in our statement to the board. But I think the Planning Commission has done what it can to balance to reach the goal of the general plan. And I think we all agree, this is an admirable goal. I mean, it looks like we're talking as if this is a real burden, but we are dealing with the future of our air in Calaveras County, and the future depends on how global you want to make this. This is an important subject, and it's something that I think our statement to the board and the current version of the greenhouse gas reduction plan, with the changes that have been made by the Planning Commission, I think is really the best we can do under current circumstances. And I recommend that the Planning Commission approve these as amended for presentation to the board on the 7th of November. We need to discuss how we're going to present it to the board.
Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission, regarding the presentation to the board, the original plan was to have a joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors. However, because of other circumstances, it seems like we would be part of a regular board meeting, and then there will be a portion of this item on the board's agenda, and then the planning commissioners would be able to respond to questions rather than present information to the board as was originally proposed. So that's done.
Just to add to that, it would have, I think maybe we just informally have 2 members of the planning commission, because we wouldn't be agendizing a planning commission meeting, which means only less than a quorum. And part of the reason for this, a large part of the reason, was the unexpected turnover of the commission, not knowing whether Commissioner Parker was going to be able to make all of these, or to also read, listen to all of the past meetings. So the thought was that Commissioners Plotnick and Laddish, having done the majority of the research on this, might be there to answer board questions and assist, rather than agendize a separate meeting of the Planning Commission, take a burden off of Commissioner Lozano and Commissioner Parker.
I strongly recommend you keep me out of that.
But certainly, every individual commissioner can speak individually with his or her board member that appointed him or her with any concerns and what have you. So, is that, it was not a formal vote, but that would just be what the thinking is of the county executive officer, given the changes that have happened and given the lack of time between now and the end of the year.
So I think it's important that the board understand the context, that they will be asking us questions, which hopefully will mean that they've read the materials. So do we need to have some sort of consensus vote for the final forms here?
You would poll. It's
Yeah,
not, this is
poll.
an informational item.
Okay.
We're only at the study session
No, I know.
phase. This is all informal decision-making right now.
Right.
Okay.
So have you both had the opportunity to read the letter to the board that just explains the background, how we got here?
Yes.
Yes.
And do you feel comfortable with that? Or
Absolutely.
are there anything you'd like to add
No,
or
I think-
subtract?
I think we've discussed this at nauseam.
And it's my first crack at it, so to speak. Just looking down the road, the county board of supervisors should assemble a very, very good grant writing team.
Yes.
Because so much of this is based on securing funds.
Right.
And if you don't, then things don't happen. So looking at this and reading the way I did and finding that so much is dependent upon pursuing grants, and without a good grant writing team, we get nowhere.
And it's very important for a rural community like ours, because they use, these quantifications are from metropolitan areas, they're from big cities, and they're not from rural communities. So they're kind of grouping us in with them, which really isn't fair. So if we do acquire this funding, we can actually quantify it for our own area, which is important, because I think you're right. They're gonna owe us. They're gonna owe us. We're not gonna have to do a lot of the things that they're requiring us to do. And we all agree with you, I believe. I know I do.
Well, I believe it's a huge piece of the puzzle that we're just don't have a handle on, and that we believe will be into our benefit. And to the benefit of everybody.
So I've already made my views known, so it sounds
Yeah.
as if we have a consensus that we
Yes.
go ahead.
Yes, I
So-
would say we do.
Everyone's comfortable with it.
Absolutely.
And Commissioner Laddish and I will be there at that meeting.
Enjoy yourselves.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Wish I could be there.
I mean, you could,
You
I
could
mean,
be there.
you all could be there.
I take that back.
Maybe you can talk to your. And I will attempt to contact the UC Extension representative and see if they have any actual numbers that they could provide us that we could pass on to the consultant. Do we believe that before November 7th, there will be numbers available?
From the consultants?
Based on this revision, hopefully.
I hope not. I mean, I think we've got something to present to the board, and I think the board itself can look at it and say, well, let's lean on the consultants.
I think that's sort of a, I think that the, county executive officer, people are hoping, the staff doesn't want to present something to the board where the board doesn't know what room they have. So I think that that's a sort of a chicken and egg problem, and I think that the county executive officer thinks the board would prefer to know what it's.
Well, that's up to the consultants then.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear what Ms. Fowler has.
I just want to just say quickly, so as far as UC Extension, I will say, so they actually, yes, Scott Anetto originally helped out in, believe it was May when this was first brought up, and he is a wealth of knowledge, but there's also a livestock advisor now named Flavie Audouin, and she's aware of kind of what's going on. She couldn't make it to this meeting today, but I could forward you her information, and you can also contact her
That
as
would be
well.
perfect.
And that way, if she does have anything to add, she can.
Okay, that would be perfect, because I will try to get every bit of information that I can.
Yes. Thanks.
Okay, so
Want more public comment?
sure,
Is there, any chance the public could get a copy of the letter you're forwarding to the board as well as the current GHG measures?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the measures will be posted after this meeting online.
And the letter.
And
as
the
well.
letter will most likely be part of the Board of Supervisors packet.
But I don't see any reason we can't post the statement also.
Okay, do you want to post a statement as well,
I-
Madam Chair?
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't have any objection to posting it.
We'll do that.
Thank you very much.
And the one thing with the statement of the Planning Commission to the board is the SORE applicability fact sheet that's attached to it, which might help with better understanding of, so if you look on, it comes after page 6 of the statement, and you see that little the applicability of off-road equipment, and it kind of goes, give you some of the examples.
I think that you could
Yeah,
post the
it-
website.
Absolutely,
Right,
yeah.
it can be
So,
connected.
yeah, so it's on the smaller document, not the big one, on the thinner one. Yeah.
And be careful on that because there's another Air Resources Board thing that talks about SOAR that is not exactly this. So you want to make sure it's the website for the SOAR applicability fact sheet.
Right, it is,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. And we would continue to field any additional questions or comments. I wish that we hadn't, it seems like we've gotten so far and not far at all. If at this hour we are dealing with this exposed information as it affects members of the ag community, because I remember when this started months and months and months ago, there were members from the ag community that were in this room and provided information to the Planning Commission. And whether it's a function of our consultants or just the way the contractual relationship, we were going on one particular path, and we were receiving information from the consultants, and we did substantial amount of work to get us to the point where they're now saying that we will be in compliance with our SB 32 goals if we did the following things. Originally, we were not meeting those goals. I mean, we were short. We were way short.
Way short.
So they went back and they did some additional analysis. Now, with regards to Marin County is one of the wealthiest counties in California. I mean, they've got resources that we don't have. So we don't know. I mean, if we're going to go out and do a bunch of studies before we actually come to a conclusion as to whether we're going to go forward or not, I don't know where that money is going to come from. I don't know if we can afford it. So it's just it's one of those situations where we're moving forward optimistically. However, we want to make sure that we represent every position, every point of view in the county, especially those members of our community that are the core elements of our community. So your comments are not going without being observed. We will do the best we can. And I'm pretty sure when it gets to the board, we'll probably have even more intense communication at that particular level. So, but in the meantime, I even think Scott will be at the meeting on the 7th because the Oak Woodlands ordinance is on the 7th as well, right, Jesse? Yeah. So Scott might be at the meeting, but if there's anything we need to know, anything we can do between now and then, or even beyond that, let's stay in touch, communicate, so that we want to solve a problem. We don't want to create additional problems for the county. Thank you.
Okay, are there any commissioner reports? Oh, do I need to continue this item just in case the schedule changes?
Yes.
So let's go ahead and continue this to our next regular meeting.
Does it have to be date specific?
Oh,
2 weeks from today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I think,
move that we continue, and I hope we don't have to discuss this item
Yeah, the
any
greenhouse
further.
gases, so. Whatever you like to second.
I will second the motion.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
November
Any
9th.
opposed? No. 4-0-0. And hopefully we will not be discussed. Could you pass this down to Gabriel before I lose it?
It'll be November.
November 9th.
November.
Yeah, and we
Oh,
do have other items on that agenda.
It's not,
At least
oh,
one
it's no, November 9th would be the second.
Yeah, the second Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah, second meeting,
yeah.
yeah. Is it, the first is the second, then the second is the 9th. See?
Yep. Okay,
Thank you.
planning director report.
None, Madam Chair, except that, like I mentioned earlier, it seems like we've gone so far and it seems like we've not gone farther enough. And I don't know what is going to happen at the Board of Supervisors meeting, but I wouldn't be surprised if we are all back in this room deliberating more on this item. Thank you.
10:12, we are adjourning the meeting.